It may sound a little hokey, but I like to think of this press as a family, and we do different things. Some of us write poetry, some of us write fiction, some of us tell the truth occasionally. Terry Dawson has done a lot. Not only has he written several pieces for us that we've taken, not poetry, I mean, he does write poetry, but the stuff we've published has been other things. And another thing he's done, when we were putting this together, I asked him a couple of times before we got real big and we had enough time and room to do it, he would set us up with some really interesting music to start our night with. And maybe we can bring that back sometime if we, or maybe not. We'll just have to see if we can find the space for it. But he's going to do a piece or two. I have no idea what it is, but I'm sure it'll be good.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks once again for all you do to keep poetry writing alive in Austin. I didn't have a piece in the calendar this year. I did last year, but I've read that a number of times, so I thought I'd read something else. I was also honored, like Charles, to be selected as a finalist in the Julia Darling Memorial Poetry Prize, and I will read that last. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and like most of us, we have mixed feelings about our home. This was in the 1970s when I left there, intending never to go back. Of course, I go back all the time, but it was also, and it was in the height of the steel industry was in full swing, so it was not as bad as it used to be back in days. It was considered the dirty city, but there was enough of that there. But it's also the place that I learned about poetry and about ballet and about jazz. And it's also where I learned about the Kamela, which some of you may know what that is. It's a pilgrimage in India where you go to this place where usually folks go out into the Ganges and they bathe themselves and purify themselves. That's part of this pilgrimage. And so I learned about that, and since that takes place at Triveni Sangam, which is a confluence of rivers, and that's where Pittsburgh is. It's on the confluence of the Monongahela, the Allegheny, which flows into the Ohio. Pittsburgh is also the place where Rachel Carson came from, who I consider the mother of the environmental movement. And so this poem I've selected here are from my latest collection of poems, which the subtitle is Poems Only a Planet Could Love. But it begins with a quote from Rachel Carson, which I think speaks to poets very much. She says, "One way to open your eyes is to ask yourself, what if I'd never seen this before? What if I knew I'd never see it again?" Western Air and Water Ballet, circa 1970. 1. Cold steel. Coke fumes settle in the seams of red brick homes stacked thick on countless hillsides. The wide Ohio swallows hard beneath shelves of gray ice and dozens of bridges, pale blue and canary. Slate sky leaning in, it is the way of this burg, choking for decades. Come nightfall, blast furnaces gorging on soft bitumen ignite the confluence of rivers, snow hardening to stalactites longer and blacker as chill reduces pollution to pirouettes of fog. The city rounds its shoulders like everyone else, making a blu-ray beeline in places inside. Words to each other as we pass rise, steaming. What's to say that's not been said? The men crowding downtown bars in AM half-light, down amber boilermakers, and utter next to nothing as they cross rivers to forge pig iron into ingots of steel. The dead of winter itself has yet to speak, as towering flues raise fists of industry from castles of soot. Defiance holding its silence. Resignation, its mischief. Pennsylvania, its choreography. And the cold, its riveted self-assurance. 2. Wet ritual. The Kumela never comes to Pittsburgh. No one mistakes the Allegheny for the Ganges, or the Monongahela for Yamuna, and wades in fully dressed till garments rise as sodden tutus. No one expects a dip in the Ohio to cleanse them like Trevini Sangam, even with its Mississippi-bound adagio feeding the Gulf, where brown women wash clothes against its shores. Still, we await the grand jeté into the invisible Saraswati from rivers. The dead floating in all, and all in time entering death, cleansing them of all desire to flow over those routinely, filling them with their sins, in time, all folding neck, arms, and legs to align with the very bottom of the water. This poem was just recently printed in the online journal, Talking Writing, and they saw a connection between this other poem, and I'll read that as well. Island Living. The island of America, floating free from and sunk into everything, with its footprint in the shape of greatness, heavy edges, calving ice, remains for now in the singular sea of our planetary mind. Free to reside here, having arrived here, carried by those determined to procreate nowhere else, we assume the mantle of abandonment of thought regarding anything save island living. We are here remains enough. Our warming weather, our receding demarcations, our short breathy occasions, and rare heavy metal libations deter not an ounce of resolve to insist without evidence, we the best, keeping science more silent and the press less evident. First residents here conceived us a turtle, its carapace spread with dirt retrieved from beneath the fingernails of a gopher, diving 6 years deep to the floor of the abyss before the creature breathed its last. When we inhabitants do the same, consider what will remain of the island of America, floating free from and sunk into everything. And the poem that was selected as a finalist is one of the few poems that came out of duress for me. I was at a conference with a number of other theologians. Some of you may know I'm a Presbyterian minister, but I was there with people from all over the world in a place called Les Avants in Switzerland. And I had been there for a while with everybody else there was from Africa, and I was the only person from the United States. And so I became very much at home with all the people there. But then a new group came in, and there were other folks from the United States, and they wanted us to express ourselves culturally in that group. And well, there were 3 black folk and 3 white folk and me. And the black folk, we could not agree on how to express ourselves culturally. And so the black folk decided that they would sing Lift Every Voice. And the 3 white guys decided to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I couldn't go either direction. I didn't feel I had the right to go and sing Lift Every Voice and sing, though I love that, and sing it often now in our church, but I couldn't go and take me out to the ball game, so I decided I'll write a poem. Tortilla Jesus. Someone has seen the face of Jesus
in a tortilla, of all places, it doesn't surprise me. I've felt the resistance of the Almighty in the spongy playfulness of sourdough injera for decades. Smelt the indignant attitude of the saints in toasted turmeric rising from the occasional Bengan Barta. And heard the crisp snap of Yoistic wisdom in the breaking of matzah. Some even report tears of blood dribbling from distracted statues of the Virgin de Guadalupe, and I say, why shouldn't she cry and bleed? After all, geckos sometimes weep aloud all night. Has their innocent son died brutally at the hands of the enforcers of empire? Besides, never chiseled rock when we're not looking most likely ekes out its own watery sorrow. La cara de Jesus has already pressed itself out of drying plaster, has made an appearance in a potato, summer squash, and in the dregs of tea in the well of fine china. Has not God also whispered to Huichol women, their minds fumed by psilocybin mushrooms? Does not one find in their beaded bowls and heads of jaguars, macaws, and coiled rattlers a revelation of the celestial realm? I would never hesitate to bite into Jesus in una tortilla. I would not hold back on the chipotle salsa either, even if it's smoked jalapenos. The spitting image of Mohammed's fingers. I'd even imbibe a ripe turd if it resembled a sitting Gautama Buddha. I am exactly that kind of guy. I do not apologize for desperately wanting holiness inside me. I, too, in the future, desire to suddenly appear in puff pastry, in pizza, in the pulpy creases of a Cinderella pumpkin uncut from its vine. Jesus in a tortilla, save my sorry soul.